Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to tackle one of the most common stumbling blocks on the digital SD, tense questions. Now tenses can get confusing, especially when sentences have multiple time frames or complex verbs. I know many of you struggle with spotting whether a sentence should be in the past, present, or future, or even knowing when to shift between them. But don't worry, today I'm going to break it all down for you. We'll go over the most common tense rules you need to know for the digital SD, how to spot tense shifts in a sentence, and how to avoid the traps that test writers love to set. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear strategy to handle any tense questions with confidence and speed. Alright, let's jump in and start mastering those tense questions. Now, before we go ahead and start taking up the different types when it comes to tenses, this video is going to be only about the specific tense types that are being tested in the digital essay. We're not going to take up all the types. It's a very wide topic. We're not going to take up all the types of tenses. We're going to focus on those types that are constantly being questioned on the test. Now, the first type is simple present tense. Now, when it comes to simple present tense, how is it used? It's used in cases where we are talking about general truth, something, a known fact, any routine or habitual activity, or a current trend. So remember this, when do we use a simple present tense? When it's about a general truth, a fact, a routine or habit, or a current trend. Now let's look at examples and let's try to understand how the tense has been created. Also, what can be those words, the trigger words that tells us that you're dealing with a simple present tense. Okay, so the first one, the earth rotates around the sun. Now, this is clearly a factual statement, right? It's never going to change. It's always going to be the same. So this is definitely going to be simple present tense. And how do I know what kind of a verb am I using? I have used an S over here with rotate because it's a singular subject. So yes, I mean, you basically add an S to the verb for the singular subjects when it comes to simple present tense. This is a simple way of understanding how to really create a tense for simple present tense. There are 7 continents on earth. Now this is again a factual statement which will not change. So this is simple present tense again. Tokyo is the capital of Japan. Again a fact, right? Some individuals consider history to be their favorite subject. Now this is again a general statement that's been made. Like generally some individuals consider this to be their favorite subject. The verb over here is consider, and because you're talking about plural subjects, there is no S, but that is how you create a simple present tense for a plural subject. I ride my bicycle to school daily. So daily is the trigger word over here. You know, this mention of the word daily tells us that this is a habitual activity, a routine activity. And what is the verb? Ride is the verb and I is the subject. He competes in the annual charity marathon. Now here, if it says he competes here, it means this is a routine or a habitual thing for this person, right? Probably this person competes every year in this annual charity marathon. Nowadays, athletes invest more time in advertising deals than practicing. So this is a current trend, right? You can use a simple present tense even for a current trend. And what is a current trend? How do I know this is a current trend? Because of the mention of nowadays. This is happening these days, like a trend. Athletes invest. Athletes is the subject and this is the verb. Because it's a plural subject, we have not used an S with invest. Recently, more teenagers prefer to read classic literature like Moby Dick and Great Expectations. Again, the mention of recently tells us that we are talking about a general current trend. And what's the subject over here? Teenagers, that's plural subject. Prefer is also a plural verb. There's no S here, which means it's a plural verb that's being used. This is how you can use simple present tense. This is how you can identify simple present tense in a sentence. Hope you understood that. Now let's move on to the next type, that is present perfect tense. Where do we use this particular tense? We use this tense for an action that began at some point in the past and it still continues, right? So the impact of this past activity, the past activity that started, the impact of it is still seen today in the present times. Look at this example. I have lived in this house for 20 years. So this person probably started living over here 20 years back and is still living, right? Have lived. Remember, whenever in a sentence you come across the helping verbs have or has, you should know you're dealing with a present perfect tense. So have and has, the mention of these 2 words will tell us that we are dealing with a present perfect tense sentence. Let's look at the next example. Since the new bus system started, the commute has improved significantly. The mention of since tells us that this is an activity that started in the past and it's still continuing in the present. So this new bus system started in the past and it is still continuing in the present. And see, the mention of has improved. The mention of has tells us that this is the present perfect tense. We use has for singular subjects and have for plural subjects. Okay, another place where we can use present perfect tense is for an event that happened at an unspecified time in the past. Like we don't know about when it happened. Example, I have visited London and Paris. So simply I don't want to pay attention or focus on when exactly that happened, but it's happened somewhere in the past, like an unspecified time in the past, right? The company has promoted the employee for their outstanding performance. Now, somewhere in the past, this happened that this company has promoted. Unspecified time. Simply note that any unspecified time in the past, if you're talking about an action of that point in time and it's not specified, you want to use a present perfect tense. You want to use have and has or has. Okay, simple past tense is simply used for an activity that happened in the past. It's a finished event. Child was excited to see his grandparents. Now, this is a done activity, finished activity. I've used a was for a singular subject child. That is how you will convey a simple past tense. Last night, so again, the mention of the last night is a trigger word that tells us that, okay, this event happened or finished last night. The kids were given permission to stay up late for a special occasion. Kids is the subject, which is plural, were is a plural verb, so it makes sense as a simple past tense. The burglars stole all the cash and valuables. This happened in the past at a specified time, unlike present perfect, which is about not specified time. At a specified time, this happened and they stole. This is the past tense form or the past form of the word steal. This is how you can use a simple past tense. It's pretty simple to understand. It's about an event that happened in the past, finished in the past. The event finished in the past. Now, this is the most complex and most important type of tense that we need to understand, the past perfect tense. Now, what happens in this particular type is that there are two past events given to you in one sentence. When you've got two past events in one sentence, we have got to know which out of those two past events happened first. So both of them are past. It's important for us to know which out of them happened first in the past. To show that first action in the past, we use a past perfect tense. And the second action is simply a simple past. How do I show anything is in past perfect tense? With the usage of had. The mention of had in a sentence should tell you that this is a past perfect activity. Now remember, when it comes to the usage of had, we can only use had when we are talking about two past activities. If in case a sentence is talking about one past activity, you will not use the word had at all. This would be incorrect. Let's look at the examples. The bus had departed by the time we arrived at the station. So had departed tells us that this event happened first and then they arrived. I had completed my homework before the bell rang. So had completed means this event happened first and then the bell rang. This is the second activity. Now tell me one thing. Let's say we didn't have the mention of had over here. Will we still understand that departing happened first or completion happened first? Let's read the sentence. The bus departed by the time we arrived at the station. We still do understand that the departing happened first. Why? Because of the mention of this key phrase or the trigger phrase, that is by the time. This tells us that this particular activity already happened before this took place. The same goes for this. The next sentence. I completed my homework before the bell rang. The mention of the word before tells us that the completion happened first and then the bell rang. So you can use the word had when it comes to two activities, two past activities in a sentence, but it's not a compulsion if the sentence is using such trigger words. If the sentence is already clearly conveying that an event happened first and then the why happened, because of the usage of these phrases and words, it's alright to not use a had at all. The word had usage is a compulsion only when it's unclear which out of the two past activities happened first. Let's go ahead and see the difference between will and would. When we are referring to a sentence with a past action, we will not use a will. It is used for future, right? Replace it with would. You can use would instead. He mentioned that there would be a heavy rain in He mentioned that there would be heavy rain the following day. So this mentioning happened earlier in the past. So I will use the word would. When referring to a sentence in the present tense, avoid using would and replace it with will. So you're talking about something in the present, not in the past. That case, you will use the word will and not would. They expect, now this is clearly giving us the present form. They expect that there will be heavy rain tomorrow. Because you're talking in the present, you will use the will. Because you are talking in the past, you will use a would. It's as simple as that. Now, this is all that you need to know when it comes to the topic of tenses. That's all for now. Thank you so much.